Hey, what's up, dudes? What's up? So, I wanted to do a follow-up video on this guitar. It's literally 3 years, almost to the day, that I did the first video on this guitar. A video that, is easily my number one. Got like 750,000 hits. So I'll try to address all the questions that have been brought up in the last 3 years. So get ready for a 3-hour video. First of all, as far as like detecting the copy, the scarf joint, that's always your number one spot. Because that's structurally built into the instrument. So there's, not a lot that the owner can do later on to change that. Right? If it's painted, we're not going to be able to see it. But if it's an unfinished neck and it has a scarf joint, then there's no way that it was made in the USA, because they don't use that construction method. I personally prefer the scarf joint, because now I know the fibers on the neck are going this way and the fibers on the headstock are going that way, and they just join at a spot rather than having to take a corner, and now the fibers are still going straight but have a much shorter span, so much easier to break the neck off. Fender does it by offsetting and continuing to go straight. Kind of smart. And various manufacturers have been using scarf joints so they can get an angle and still have straight fibers on a headstock. So if anything, a scarf joint is a good thing, not a bad thing, As I understand it, again, I haven't bought one of these. I've mentioned several times, but people seem to always think I bought one yesterday. But this was October of 2010, and I think the last one I picked up was maybe February of 2011. This is the last copy ever, like period, or right around there in that spring. And so it's been a while. Lately, I got into Fenders, and lately I've been getting into vintage Ibanez and vintage Kramer and, things like that. But I love this Classic Vibe series. They're really nice. But, to sort of pick up on a couple of things I didn't mention in the last video, look at the bridge. The copies are always a slotted top for a flathead screwdriver, and have a very large, post inside the bridge. The real ones have at least the American-made ones. The Epiphones are the same way, but if it's a USA-made Gibson, then it's going to have a very small pin in the middle. It won't be slotted, and the wheel will be a little bit bigger. Because it's really meant for finger use and not for a screwdriver. Now, you might say, well, that's very easily changed. Actually, it's not, because the American one uses a standard and these use a metric, and they don't quite line up. And I've seen them try to jam them on there, and it just doesn't work. They're just far enough away where it's not going to work. So what you have to do is you have to get an import, and the imports always seem to have this large post with the slotted top. So if there's someone out there who makes a smaller one, I've yet to see it, but it could be out there. But that's a good place to start. If it has the slotted top, then right away, In fact, it's funny, because I see a lot of people, they'll send me photos, and they'll say, wow, I really want this one. And of course, the person who posted the photo up on whatever, Trade Ting, AliExpress, Alibaba, DHgate, there's so many sites out there that sell these things. It's the real one. And I'll say, well, of course that looks really nice. That's the real one. That's not the copy. You're going to be sorely disappointed when the real one. I mean, when the copy shows up, because it's not going to be nearly as nice, and it couldn't be, right? I mean, you're talking a guitar that cost, this was like $200. I think $80 shipping, $280 to my front door. Versus a nice flame top Les Paul. I mean, used, you'd be lucky to find one for $1,500 or $1,800, and new, they're like $2,500, $2,800. So I would hope for that kind of price difference that the Gibson would be a lot nicer. But these aren't bad guitars. These are very similar, and I've compared them to countless Epiphones over the last 3 years. They're pretty much an Epiphone with a Gibson branded headstock. The construction is almost identical. In fact, I think some of the later made ones, Epiphones, these more recent ones seem to be a little bit better, but there was a period where I was checking out some of the, and I don't know who was making the Epiphone. Maybe they were being made in Korea, or some of the early Chinese ones, but man, the quality was pretty bad. I would say this was a better quality, but I think the last maybe 2 years, and those were used. I've been checking out more and more new ones. The construction is almost identical. It really is, except the Epiphone one is $499, $599, and this one's $200. $290, $280 to your front door. So the pickups are stamped Epiphone on the bottom. The input jack is stamped Epiphone. I think maybe even the toggle switch is stamped Epiphone somewhere on it. Whether they are Epiphone or not, I have no idea. But, if you're going to fake something, wouldn't you stamp it Gibson, right, rather than Epiphone? So I'm not really sure that those are anything but Epiphones. This is a program called Overstacked. This is Guitar Rig 5. And then I think this is the same one without the tube screamer on. So a lot of people ask, did you change the pots and the pickups? No, I didn't change the pickups, I didn't change the pots, I didn't change anything. The whole guitar is exactly the way I got it 3.5 years ago. And, when something breaks, I'll change it. But I'm in no hurry to change it. If it's working, why change it? That's the Solo. That's the, what do they call it? Solo 51? That's basically the Van 51 amp, the 5150. They can't call it 5150. The other thing, when you're looking for the copy, the copies almost always have a white binding and no nib, no fret nib, which is basically a little bit, the binding covers over the end of the fret. The Chinese companies do make a fret end, but it's not the same. It's a little different. It's rounder. The Gibson one is more of a cream color, and it's like a brownish cream, like orangey brown, almost like a clay. When the copy companies do it, it's almost always yellow, right? Just like straight up yellow. So it looks very different. And then the other thing is that most of them don't have the fret ends. where the Gibson will. Not every Les Paul has fret ends, has the nibs at the ends of the frets. Certainly the early models and the historical models don't seem to have it. It really seemed to come later on. And so that's a big giveaway right there. And of course, just the way they do it. It would be in your interest to take a close look at the Gibson fret ends and then compare it to the guitar you're looking at, because that goes a long way. Again, these are sort of structural items that can't be changed. If the pickups look a certain way, someone can just rip out the pickups and put Gibson pickups in it. They can't just rip the binding off and put new binding on. That's a far more complex job that's unlikely to be done aftermarket. You could say, oh, the tuners don't look right. Well, you can change the tuners. The bridge doesn't look right. Well, you can change the bridge, but not really, because they're the metric sizing. There's only so many that are going to fit it that are going to work with this spacing. So, that could definitely be a source of, trying to look for the copy. The top is a veneer. There's really no way to check that other than pulling pickups out. And if you're checking out a guitar, you can't, excuse me, I'm just going to take your strings off and pull your pickups out. I'm going to take a look inside the cavity. It's like, beat it. So, that's not going to happen. But, it's the little things you can find. The scarf joint's huge because you can just see it, it's pretty quick, and you get a good idea of whether or not it's the real deal or not. So that's about it. A lot of people say, can you just buy one if or do you ever go to Rare Electric Guitars? I don't know how Rare Electric Guitars gets away with it, other than if you go to their website, there's absolutely no contact information whatsoever, and that makes sense. Because they're really not supposed to be selling these within U.S. borders. And maybe they don't. Maybe they're offshore. Who knows? But, the only place you can really buy these is online, through a Chinese website, through a dealer that you take a chance on and hope something shows up that's worth buying. And, and that's it. Now, I've been pretty lucky. I got to say, all mine are pretty good. So, statistically speaking, I've had pretty good luck, but, I have heard of horror stories out there, but maybe it was a case of expectations being set a little too high. But, I think for the money, the Squier Vintage Modified and the Squier Classic Vibes are some of the best guitars out there right now. I think they're sort of, beating up everybody else in terms of what, bang for the buck, because they're so inexpensive. Just really, really amazing quality for the money they're getting. All right, guys, so that's it. A little follow-up video on this old thing, my old import, and I have another one in red. It's a long story, but I have almost the identical guitar in red, but it's got like the vintage inlay, so they're like a little yellowish. They're nice. That one, I have a set of Duncans around here somewhere. I bought the wrong spacing for the Ibanez, and then when I figured it out, the neck doesn't matter. That spacing's fine, but the bridge was a little too narrow, so I got the right spacing. Now I'll take that, and I picked up a 59, so I have a JB for the bridge and a 59 for the neck, and I'll probably throw it in that red one, one of these. They could definitely use a little bit of upgraded pickups. Suppose I could put it in this, but I like this look of the silver. I'll probably get like an antiquity or something like that. Either Duncan or there's a bunch of makers out there. Suppose I could get the Gibsons, but I've played them in Bobby's. I thought they were a little bright. So I think I might like the JB. They probably make that in a metal covered, or I'm sure there's a bunch of manufacturers out there that make a nice metal covered pickup. All right, guys, get a little bit closer look at this. Watch where I'm walking here. and knock the tripod over. That's about it. Check the back out there a little bit. Alrighty. Alright guys, as always, rock on.